All right, so 5 minutes in, that means we're ready to go. I see we are recording this now, so everyone, we're going to record this just so you have this as an example. If you never need to rely back to it, we'll also be sending out the deck at the end of the presentation. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Jake Robbins, and I'll be the host for most of it. I lead the RPA practice here at eCapital Advisors, and today we're talking about supply chain operations, and this is stuff I love. I really love this stuff. I used to work for Anheuser-Busch for many years, and part of my role was working within the supply chain group and understanding how we can enable technology there. So a lot of this stuff I talk about today, I've witnessed firsthand a lot and saw the impact it can have. It's stuff I helped implement firsthand to really gain efficiencies in our organization and also really change the ways of work for the employees to make it more value add and more enjoyable as they went to work. So very, very excited to share with you these examples today and kind of the story around everything. With that being said, I'm going to kind of share my screen right now. Going to go into the presentation. Awesome. So once again, hey everyone, thanks for joining. At any point of time today, if you have a question, right, or anything you want to talk about during this presentation, feel free to send it in to us through the chat mechanism. This is for you, right, first and foremost, right? So at the end of the day, I want you to take away something. If it's one thing, if it's the whole presentation, it doesn't matter to me. It's for you though, right? It's to help you see the potential of RPA in the operations areas, because again, there's so much potential there. And it really is exciting work once you get to actually dive into it. So with that being said, a little bit about the agenda today. I'm going to start kind of briefly going over like why automation exists today, why we're using it, what it's trying to tackle. Then go right into kind of an overview of RPA. I like to define things so we can get on the same level, especially with some of these buzz terms we hear all the time. A little bit about the industry as a whole and where RPA is and where it's heading. And then go into the actual use cases in the demo, right? So a lot of today's discussion will be around those demos and those use cases, and we're going to kind of expand out to it to kind of really paint a picture of how RPA plays a role in operations today. So with that being said, again, my name is Jake Robbins. I am the RPA practice lead here at eCapital Advisors. I'm a lifelong data nerd and dot connector. Again, I've started automating things for fun in middle school, and I kind of progressed towards making it a career very recently. So prior to joining eCapital, I spent 4.5 years at AB doing a lot of operational things. I led the first machine learning project at the operations side. I helped implement a large business forecasting website, as well as kind of enhancing the BI reports to kind of be more meaningful and more action-driven. I'm a huge traveler. Everyone who knows me knows I'm a huge foodie. If you have favorite restaurants that you want to recommend in the area you live, please let me know. I'm going to be moving to Chicago pretty soon. So if you live in Chicago for some reason and have favorite restaurants, let me know. It's very, very much a passion of mine. With that being said, I'm going to pass it on to Mike to give a quick introduction as well.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Michael McClure. I'm an RPA consultant here at eCapital, and you'll find that my background is very similar to Jake. Like him, I also had experience at AB in supply chain, and generally just have a passion for automation programming in general. I'm a huge tech nerd, so any conversation about tech, I'm happy to jump in on. So feel free to shoot me an email, whether you want to talk about any of the RPA stuff we go over, anything in operations, be great. But mainly in supply chain, I was working as a warehouse manager. So I have a lot of experience directly on the front line, kind of dealing with some of this operations, and really have some insights, I think, into the most valuable things to automate that we're going to try to show off today. And just about me personally, I love skiing. I love traveling to Italy. Like many people during COVID, I think those plans have been turned upside down, but I can't wait to get back eventually. And I'm an animal lover. So, and with that, I can go on to John.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Michael. And John Kurth with eCapital. I lead our automation, sales, and client experience here. Been with eCapital for over 2 years now, and prior to that, I was in the web analytics and automation space. So it's been a really fun ride, as Michael and Jake have already shared, just how things have changed and evolved over time. Outside of work, you can find me pretty much anywhere in the outdoors, traveling. When hopefully we're able to get back to that here soon. So, without further ado, to kind of get us kicked off and frame up today's conversation, one of the things that we find most beneficial and helpful for people is kind of taking a step back and looking at holistically, where we've come over the last, let's just say 20 years. And other than the one consistent of change, which occurs all the time, there's been this huge influx and just rapid amount of data that's become readily available to us and that we're able to track as systems have gotten more simplistic and complicated all at the same time. I mean, even just looking here recently in the last year or so, since we've all been affected by COVID, with the toilet paper shortages, COVID data, the most recent canal blockage as it relates to supply chain, data is just rampant everywhere. And so the challenge that's created for organizations is how do we cut through the noise, start to work smarter, not harder, and truly make business impacts that we're able to focus on and drive the organization forward. And the way eCapital's been doing that, over the last 20 years has really been looking at the cutting edge solutions on the market today and implementing those solutions within our clients. So, Jake, I think you can kind of flip forward a couple of slides here, maybe. So I guess as it relates to this one, again, just kind of implementing some of those cutting edge solutions across all facets of the business, whether it's office of finance, operations and supply chain, IT, marketing even. It's really kind of truly across the board, and everything that we do here at eCapital day in, day out is to make an impact for our clients and to help you move the organization, forward. So the way we do that, flip into the next slide, Jake, is really kind of three main areas: looking at performance management, data and analytics, and then advisory and transformation. So when we talk about performance management, we're really looking at kind of those office of finance tasks and interactions with planning and budgeting for the business, looking at the business model, reporting out to internal and external stakeholders, et cetera there. From a data and analytics perspective, we'll be discussing a lot of these things here today, primarily around robotic process automation and automation. But also, we help our clients with modern data warehouses and data hubs to be able to gain those speed to insights quickly, then cleaning up the data so then we can actually visualize and see that raw data so that it tells a story that we're able to digest it and again, make those quick, fast decisions to drive the business forward. And then along with that, in terms of working smarter, not harder, is looking at how can we incorporate, data science into our everyday with machine learning, artificial intelligence, et cetera. And then lastly, from a advisory and transformation perspective, really asking and challenging our clients, and in fact, them kind of challenging us to say, here's where we want to go from a data and analytics vision perspective. What's our roadmap to get there? Are we on the right path? What solutions or people or process, cultural shifts do we need to make to end up and achieve and exceed, our vision of objectives overall? So a lot of different ways that we help our clients each and every day. But without further ado, I'm going to turn things back over to Jake to really kind of get us kicked off with one of his favorite questions. Jake?
Yes. So a lot of RPA, again, the reason why I love RPA is the impact it has to your employees, right? It makes one of the biggest differences I've ever seen from any technology in the fact that it can really reduce the mundane and really help re-engage employees with value-added work and things that they want to do. So I always ask this question that kind of gets to that point, right? If there was a way for me to remove your least favorite hour of your day and replace it with your most favorite, would you jump on the opportunity? And I don't think I've been doing this for these webinars for over a year now. I don't think I've ever had someone say no. And that's great, right? We all have things we need to do, right? There are things in our jobs that I call the daily due diligences that we all do. We don't love to do them, but they need to be done, right? It needs to be done to keep the lights on, to keep things afloat, to keep things running. However, if there was a chance for us to remove those things and actually get back to more project work, I think everyone would agree that yes, let's do that. So why does automation exist? And I try to simplify this, right? There's tons of reason why automation started and how it started with, the cotton gin back in the 1800s or however old that is, and kind of went to the manufacturing lines first, and now towards RPA, where we're kind of looking towards how do we simulate employee actions. But the reason why we have it is because we all face kind of similar challenges, right? And the first one I like to think, I call these the 3 C's, right? The first thing is consistency. Let's face it, right? We all make mistakes, but our mistakes, no matter how small, can have a large downstream impact. So there's this pressure to be perfect every time, right? Everyone goes through this. We need to be perfect. Everything needs to be buttoned up. We need to align on everything, because if any mistake happens during our transformation of the data or through the process, there could be a large cost to us. The other thing, though, that comes about is complexity, right? As we keep going towards the future, we keep adding on and adding on and adding on more applications that we need to interface with to do our job, right? And the problem with adding these applications in is, one, they don't always play nice together, right? We have to learn how to tweak things to make them play nice, and it's not always the easiest or most straightforward way to do so. Also, the more things we add, the more trainings are necessary to understand those applications. And furthermore, it drives consistency, even that need to be perfect, even more, right? The more applications they use, the more I need to remember, the harder it is to be perfect. And when you think of this complexity and consistency and how it plays together, you start to look at it from a cultural aspect, right? You start seeing people disengage and not putting the extra effort in to go out of their way to do something for it, because they're stuck with this, need to be perfect within all these different systems, right? People want to work on things that they feel like are driving value to the organization. And when people are stuck working through the manual data entries and things like that, you don't really feel that you're putting so much into the work that you're doing, that you're getting, you're growing as an individual, or that you're really making an impact. So when we look at it together, right, I like to think about employees' well-being in the center, and kind of like a flywheel, all bridges together with it, kind of bringing our employees kind of centered, right? So if consistency is good, there's not much complexity, and everyone is doing extra effort because they love the company they work for, your employees' well-being is great. However, if there's this need to be perfect and there's this heightened complexity that keeps growing and growing and growing, we end up seeing that cultural shock, and your employees' well-being, well, they're not happy anymore. That's what we call, again, it moves them to look for another place to work, right? Another area where they can feel like they're making impact directly, where they're not bundled up with all of this kind of manual data entry or all these manual repetitive tasks. Does it make sense so far? I know most people probably don't look at it as a people technology first, but RPA is heavily impacts your employees' well-being. Any questions on this? Perfect. Go on to the next one. So what tasks are we even talking about, right? So the way most RPA consultants look at it is we look at things from a frequency perspective and how difficult it is. So things in the left-hand corner, right? 3-year planning, strategy, business development, bot management, expectation management, right? Client interaction. We know these things aren't ready to be automated, right? The AI isn't sophisticated enough to where we can truly believe in the machines and believe in what we like to think of as the black boxes to really tell us, hey, how should we plan for 3 years? But things like data set comparisons, reporting, data entry, emailing, reading, copying, aggregating data, these things are all high frequency tasks that end up being pretty low difficulty. We call this area of work the automation sweet spot. And these are the things we try to tackle when we look towards implementing RPA within our clients. So at the end of the day, the goal of automation, again, there's tons of goals, but the one I like to stick to is that it strives to strip away the mundane and empower your employees to be the best versions of themselves. So now that we know that there's the technology out there that can really impact our employees' well-being while driving efficiency, what is it anyway? What is this technology? What is this magical thing? So RPA is, for us, is the solution, is the software itself, which integrates into almost any business environment and simulates employee actions. And this is key, right? It's not a script. We like to think of it as a digital employee, right? Someone who's going to work alongside you or work autonomously in the back to make sure your processes are running smoothly 100% of the time. So some of the capabilities are, following data entry, right? Moving data from one application to another, following rule-based procedures, right? Adding in validation logic, adding in different categorization logics, whatever you need, right, to make sure that the data is being sent from application to application in the correct way. Extracting data, also super popular with RPA, right? Scraping information off of websites, off of applications. It's all very possible with RPA. Validating data, right? Making sure that things balance from one account to the other, that our systems are in sync. RPA does this really well because RPA bots can think way faster than any human can. Report generation is super popular. Being able to burst reports out of ERP systems without the need of licensing, being able to create custom PowerPoint decks off of our data really quickly to be able to showcase kind of the movements and the things we're working on in our organizations. And lastly, emailing, right? I don't think any RPA system would be complete without the ability to showcase and tell everyone what it's doing, right? So logging and emailing to make sure everyone is up to date with what the bots are doing in the background, very important. Obviously, there's so much more capabilities, but these are some of the ones we like to highlight. So what is the full spectrum, right? So when we think about it, and if you're going to take away anything from today's talk, I would take away this one line. As long as a process can be mapped, I promise you, it can be automated. We've sat with tons and tons of people, and every time we talk with them, there's always this sense of disbelief that their process really can be automated. And as long as you're diligent in the mapping of it and understand the different validations we need to do or the different cases or switches that we need to make, it can be automated and we can map that out. The technology is sophisticated enough. Now, we're talking operations today, but I did want to go a little bit higher level and kind of display out some of the use cases and other verticals of the operation. So in the general sense, data entry, emailing, validating data, report generation, kind of those things I covered earlier, right? Those core competencies of RPA. Finance, these are all super popular today. Claims management, accounts receivable, accounts payable, procurement, again, all have plenty of room for automation. Operations, so we're going to be going over inventory control, shipment execution, shipment consolidation, forecasting, and operations monitoring all today. So all of these use cases you'll be able to see in some facet during our presentations later. From an IT side, data cleaning, data validation, getting people up and running with support, doing password resets, all very popular with RPA today. And HR, I always think is kind of left out, but it's so much room for automation there, right? With kind of managing benefits, recruiting, training, helping with the payroll, and even doing surveying. So lots of, if you're gonna, again, take away anything, any process that can be mapped can be automated, and there are plenty of opportunities within any vertical of the operation you look at. So why, you probably can hear from my voice, I'm very excited about this technology, but why do I want you to be excited about it? There's tons of reasons, right? So the first thing is that improved employee morale. Again, I like to think of RPA as the best way to make your employees reinvigorated in the work that they do, right? It allows your employees to focus on more strategic, more value-added things. The second thing is it's super productive, right? RPA solutions can execute 10 times faster than any human can. That number can go higher and higher and higher and higher and higher too. One example of why this is, the fastest humans rates at 200 words per minute. The RPA bots rate at 500 words per minute. So just by its ability to type faster, you're already getting speed benefits. And this is true across the entire spectrum of activities you do. It's always taking the most direct way of doing an action. And because of that, it performs really well. They're super reliable, right? We like to say there's no HR department for a bot. They're going to work 100% of the time, no questions asked, don't have to worry about a sick day or a vacation. They're super consistent, right? They follow the rules that you set up. It can't make new rules. It's not going to ever deviate from the way you constructed the automation. So you know for a statement that you know that this is going to work 100% of the time. It's super non-invasive and ultra compliant. So it's got a strong governance platform, which allows you to kind of improve accuracy and ensure that you're following every regulatory compliance that you need to. And it's super non-invasive. It can be spun up on the cloud or on your on-premise server. So you have all the options that you want from a security perspective. It's SOC 2 compliant, it's HIPAA compliant. RPA bots are used at the largest healthcare companies. They're used in some of the NGOs and public sector work. Again, it's the use cases are so prevalent everywhere that it has to be super compliant to get that breadth of kind of use cases out there. It's super low technical. What you'll see today is, although I come from a background of computer science and Mike does too, the tool itself does not require any coding knowledge. It's all drag and drop, which allows even the newest analysts to the organization to really take hold of this technology and feel like they can make their own automation very, very quickly. And lastly, it's accurate, right? you don't have to you're able to track everything it's doing to log out kind of every step of the process. And this allows us to ensure that everything that's going on is done accurately, right? Again, they're never going to make their own code. So these bots are going to sit up there in the cloud, essentially helping you work and removing all the tedium from your days. Any questions so far on some of the reasons for excitement? Awesome. So with that being said, I want to do a little bit of an interview, kind of an industry overview. So why I do this. So the purpose of me showing this to you is to say, hey, you're not alone, right? Nearly 9 out of 10 manufacturing organizations have already implemented RPA or AI into their business, right? And today, because we're talking about operations, that fact holds super true, right? 87% have some form of automation already implemented. Media, publishing, energy, it's the same, right? 86 to 85%. Banking, super popular with RPA, professional services, and even things like transportation and public sector have been going closer towards more yeses than no in the previous years. This study was done in 2019. There is a huge boost of interest in RPA because of COVID, right? Imagine that instead of having to worry about staying home, being socially distant, and making sure your kids are learning, you had bots being kind of running in the background, helping be your security blanket almost, in a sense, as they run through the daily processes, so you can focus on managing work at home and making sure your kids are learning or they're okay during the pandemic that we just had. Because of that, because people have realized that, hey, bots can be super helpful when things go awry, like a pandemic, the popularity has increased dramatically. As far as function, again, it's deployed across every function in manufacturing and logistics, inventory management, customer service. You see it across the board. Again, when you make a technology as generalizable as RPA, you tend to see it being used across pretty much every part of business that we see today. So with that being said, one quote before I go into some of the demos and some of the kind of use cases of how this works within operations. So in 2017, and again, these numbers have only gone up, Deloitte did a huge study on, hey, how impactful will RPA be in the future? What they found is through all of their partnerships that they had, that the potential ROI for the first year is between 30 and 200%. And when you see numbers like this and see the payback be so quick, as well as giving your employees a morale boost, I am just so happy that this technology exists, right? That we have the ability to both present a huge ROI boost at the same time as making everyone's lives better within the organization. So with that being said, we're going to go into some demos. Prior to me actually demoing it, I want to give a brief overview of kind of how I view the supply chain and kind of a little bit about the story of how we're going to talk today. So to me, the goal of an efficient supply chain is to get the right products to the right location at the right time and for the right cost, right? Everything we do in operations and logistics and supply chain go around these ideas, right? Trying to get the raw materials manufactured or changed to a final good that we can push it to a distribution center so that we can eventually get that product out in our customers' hands. And as we grow as organizations, this process gets more and more complicated, right? We need to understand, how do we optimize supply? How do we optimize production? How do we get the right demand? How do we make sure that the inventory is right at all of our facilities? And the larger your organization is, the more complicated this process is, right? We've simplified it a bit, right? There's no cross stocks, there's no international shipments. We want to keep it somewhat streamlined from a basis so we don't go into the nitty gritty of everything for the entire conversation. So the way we're going to talk about it today, we're going to talk about the supply chain as being something that goes from raw materials that gets manufactured or produced in some facet, gets shipped out to a distribution center, and ultimately gets to the customer's hand. Obviously, the customer doesn't have to be a store; it could be a different business. But for the point of this conversation, again, it doesn't really matter. It's just the end goal is always to get that good to the customer. So we're going to actually start some of the demos starting from the left-hand side here and moving over to the customer side. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is demand, right? How do we best forecast demand? So this is something I have very personal experience with. I led a team of forecast demand planners and inventory managers at Anheuser-Busch. So a lot of the things I'm bringing over today is things I went through firsthand in industry, right? Things that I saw were taking a lot of time that I knew could be improved. And so because I was owning the group at the time, I made those improvements. So the ultimate question that we're asking is, can we forecast customer demand both better and faster? So let me talk about how it's traditionally done. So the way it's traditionally done is there is a machine in the background, right, that's going to do a bulk of your modeling, right? SAP has APO, which has a large demand planning software. There's O9 systems. There's tons of different systems out there that hold demand, right? Or if you're if you're a small organization, you might be doing this all by hand in Excel. Then there's this enrichment process, right? We bring people to get together either in a formal, sales and operations meeting or through a team who is looking at the seasonality, right? The analytics, the biases, the prices and promotions that are going on to kind of enrich the base machine forecast to make it better, right? To make it more realistic to expectations today. Eventually, these forecasts turn into the actual production side and eventually gets towards the shipment of the actual goods at the end of the day. However, there's a huge potential to merge RPA into this process, right? So instead of doing it all by hand, why not have a bot help, right? So have a bot that moves data from the source system, be it Excel, SAP, doesn't matter, and move it into a machine learning model, right? Have a machine learning model look at that data and see what is an optimal way that I can predict the forecast in the future, right? I don't want to go too much into machine learning today, but there are lots of powerful models in the machine learning kind of ecosystem that outperform even the ARIMA or the classical traditional statistical models that we might use. And then at the enrichment, instead of doing it by hand, why not have a bot take the first pass of it, right? Have it look for seasonality, have it understand the prices and promotions and make adjustments, have it do the sales analysis, and have it look for those biases and accuracy adjustments to make things more accurate. And when we look at it doing it this way, right, it ends up making the forecasts more accurate and at the same time being done faster, right? And the reason why is kind of twofold. One, these numbers that we forecast after enrichment have to go somewhere, right? So that process of moving that data into whatever system it may be is very time consuming. When I worked at AB, I had 4 people on my team whose total job was to look at, make forecast adjustments and enter those adjustments into the source system. And that would take them the entire week to do, right? If we had a bot doing it instead, which was what we ended up doing, you could remove that part of the job completely and focus it on making your numbers more accurate and talking with the sales teams to make sure that they're understanding why you're forecasting the demand the way it is. So you can really come together and work as a holistic unit instead of one separated. What's also nice is that you're able to, through the bot, again, move through this enrichment process to kind of add in some of the more interesting features that may not be captured in the base level data. So with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing here. I'm going to pass it over to Mike to showcase this demo of how do we actually go about automating a demand planning model. So with that being said, Mike, pass it over to you.
Awesome.
Before we even start, do you have any questions on this? This is hugely impactful once you start doing it because of the quickness and agility that you get through the process. All right.
Awesome. And so I always say I get the exciting part of this presentation. I actually get to show off the demos and the software, which is by far the coolest part to me. So you can see my screen all right? All good?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. So first, before we go into the specific demos, I want to just highlight the software, and our preferred RPA vendor is Automation Anywhere. To sum it up shortly, it has the lowest technical barrier, so you can really get this software into the hands of your employees, and they don't need that computer science background to really start to leverage it and use it and get business advantages from it. So Automation Anywhere is a cloud-based platform, but it can be on-premise as well. This is a community account, so it's the free edition, and it is just a URL that you log into. So you can access your code anywhere, edit your code anywhere, schedule your bots anywhere, which is really convenient in the cloud format. You get a high-level overview on the left. This is called the control room, where you kind of manage everything. You can go into your dashboard, see the number of task bots that have been created, the actions you use, how long it takes. You can see what's currently running. You can see your historical, if anything's aired out. So great from administrator IT perspective to get an idea of what's actually happening when you're running these bots. If we go into the bots page, we have an area where we actually hold all the task bots, and that's where they're developed in. We have a credential vault, like Jake was saying earlier. These are compliant and have HIPAA compliant security. So you can put passwords in here where no one else can see them except the administrator, and even the bot developers can't actually see the passwords themselves, but they can use them. That way you can have security. You have global values. You can actually install packages. There's a bot store with, I believe, over 500 plus packages that you can install, and that's always growing. So that's a lot of integration that we're talking about. That's really nice with the RPA software. SAP, there's integration. Salesforce, there's integration kind of natively built in, as well as we have some AI enhanced features. So Discovery Bot and IQ Bot is kind of leveraging AI to figure out what an invoice looks like or what process is a person doing, and then trying to automate that so it's dynamic. You know, you don't have to point it and say, I can only send it this one type of invoice. It has to be perfectly in this format. You can use some AI logic to dynamically pull out fields. Then also administration, you have users that you can create and set up their permissions. So that's how you manage it all from here. Pretty convenient. But the exciting part is actually the development area. So for now, before we get into a demo that we created, I'm just going to show off kind of the development software. So there's two views. I believe that the flow is a little bit easier to understand if you're not used to programming. And on the left side, you can see you have an action bar here and your variables, but for the most part, we want to focus on our actions. So what we mean when it's a low technical barrier and you don't need that computer science background is that you can really just type in here what you need and it'll spit out all the natively built-in functions. So if we type in Excel, we can immediately see all these built-out functions for Excel. And it's very easy to use. So I'm a new developer at this. I want to open an Excel document. I type in Excel. I see this one that says open. Opens an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, that's what I want. And then very easy. You just input the parameters that you need for this function. You don't have to go about like the coding of it yourself. So desktop file or a variable, you can just select a file. How do you want to open it? What sheet do you want to open to? Does it contain a header? And what's the session that you're going to open it? So makes it really easy to start doing this, right? It's not script based like a lot of typing. And again, you can just continue. Maybe instead of an Excel document, we need to open a browser and get something from the internet. We type in open, we see browser, awesome. And then we can just put in a URL, and just like that, we've gotten to our browser. So it's really easy to get started with this. And like I said, there's a lot of integrations in here. SAP, if you use SAP for your organization, instead of having to start from scratch, there's already a bunch of built out functions here in Automation Anywhere. And it's all, like I said, drag and drop. There's not a lot of coding to do. But the great part is that there are coding features. So if statement, right? If one thing happens, do something else, otherwise do something else. So there is coding logic you can do in here. We can go for exception handling. So we have try catches. Try to do this. If it fails, then try to do something else. So you can see in this flow view too, kind of just that process flow, which is nice. Personally, I prefer this other view, which is a little bit more, if you are used to script-based coding, it's a little bit more similar to that. So again, if we want to go to Excel, you can kind of see it's a line item instead. So overall, very cool software, easy to use, easy to get into after just, a couple hours of playing with it. So with that,
I see the question before we head on about the data security controls.
Yeah.
So essentially, because the way the software works, right, is it actually deploys an agent onto a local machine, right? So it could be a server in your system, or it could be a person's computer, right? It doesn't really matter. But because of that way, right, about it deploying an agent to a machine, it's actually the Automation Anywhere doesn't hold any of your data, right? It's just using it as you direct it to a certain file. So it's never actually reading in or keeping anything in a database that's unsecure for use, right? It's moving your data into memory for the run for the bot, but that's it. So from a data security standpoint, because of the architecture and how it works, unless there's another area of law that you want me to talk to, there is no concern from a security standpoint of this having data in a way that was any way insecure. The one question that comes about is the passwords and the usernames and things like that. Because of the credential vault and how it's hashed and how it's stored, it's going to pass any security ramifications that you need to make sure that this information is not readily available to anyone except for the administrator of the site.
Yeah. So yeah, like Jake was saying, even a bot developer can use these passwords, but they won't be able to see them. They can just pull from them. Salesforce password. I won't know what it is, but I can use it if I need to get into that. So it's a cool way to really manage passwords.
And another thing on the security side, right? You can actually, if you go with an on-premise version, you can set it up so that you can only access the website via a VPN. or you have to have a certain username to log into the system, right? There are different ways that you can get, so you can customize the system to kind of fit whatever bill that you want.
Awesome. And there's no more questions. I'm going to jump into the first demo. So this is what a more built out script would look like. So again, you have the two views, the flow view, which is nice for a visual of kind of how it's running. But again, I prefer the list view just because I like to see everything all at once. So before we run it, I want to kind of give an overview of what it's doing. So we're going to do a machine learning model on our sales data. This is the sales data. As you can see, it is super long, and also it's not in the right format that we need to run the machine learning model. Instead of having a person do that, we're gonna have the RPA bot read in this data and manipulate it to get in a form that we need so we can run through a machine learning model. And then I also want to show off the forms. So this can be in a lot of different systems, right? Salesforce, proprietary, internal, ERP, whatever. This is just a job form, but this is kind of what Jake was talking about when he said that people would spend their entire weeks entering data. So this is just 5 items. And for one wholesaler or one distribution center or one place that it's going, you can see how it really would start to add up. You have 100 different distribution centers, then you have 100 different items. And then for each one, you need to go in here and enter a value. Really easy to fat finger something. Wouldn't be good to target, 15,000 instead of 1,200. So that's where we talk about the real advantages of RPA. You'll see how quick it does this and how accurately it does this. So that being said, I just want to show off kind of what it's going to do because it's going to move quickly. And I'll have my hands up during it. There is one pause in this demo just to show off kind of the machine learning a little bit. Won't go into detail, but.
So because this is an RPA conversation and not a machine learning conversation, right? We did want to showcase how the two play together. In reality, the machine learning model we set up is pretty simplistic. There would be a lot more work towards tuning it, towards getting it to the right way to make sure that we're actually predicting demand within your circumstances. But for today's case, the sales patterns are pretty concrete, and the model is pretty fast in its agility to actually produce a result. However, it's not hard coded. So it's all the machine is learning based on the data we have the second we hit play, right? I'm not keeping a result and storing it. It is doing it as soon as the script runs. In reality, you wouldn't ever see the script running, but because to make it more visual, we're actually going to show it.
So that's why, like you were saying, great with data science is we can actually call Python scripts, everything from this automation anywhere RPA software, which makes it really versatile, connecting data and running any type of scripts or programs that you need. So I'm going to go ahead and hit start. My hands are up, and this is kind of how the bot runs. It's going to go ahead and read in that data, and then it's going to open our Jupyter notebook where our machine learning model is going to take place. I do have a breakpoint in here just so I can speak to it quickly, but you'll see there was hundreds of thousands of lines in data in there. Right now it's reading it in, and there we go. So that was pretty quick. And then here's our machine learning model. It's going to go ahead and start running that by itself. Not me. And it is a breakpoint here just so we can kind of review the results and make sure everything looks good, talk about it a little bit. So here we go. So we are running 5 items and forecasting them out. As we can see, the trends for all these items are very similar. So that we would assume that they're very similar items. But if you look at the axes, they're actually very different. So we're looking at 2,000 here versus 5,000 here. And overall, we can see this is a pretty good trend. This is obviously a growing company, and we want to make sure that's being captured. And machine learning code, just to go over it real quick, it's just a Facebook open source model, slightly parameterized for this, but again, not a data science machine learning conversation. So this is the results. Now that we have our forecast data, we actually need to get into our system, right? Our ERP, our Salesforce, we can actually forecast. So go ahead and close this. And apparently my internet cut out real quick, so we will just go ahead and restart it. Not a big deal. Okay. Hopefully no issues. Sometimes debug mode can need its own debugging, but
for bandwidth and speed, Juan, it's as quick as your internet allows. We've never had any issues from a bandwidth perspective. There's also abilities from to put in like implicit weights and things like that which allows you to, let's say the internet was slow for a period of time, you can get around it through those different functions.
Yeah, a lot of that try catch stuff, right? Try to do it. If we fail, then we can try to run the bot later. So finish running. It looks like we're good to go this time. As soon as these delays run through. And we'll step through it and then actually start entering them into that Salesforce system or ERP. There we go. So again, hands are up. We're going to do 5 items. And as you can see, it's a lot quicker than any human could do it. And it's just going to loop through these 5 items and input them. So we have our current forecast, which was last year, and our revised forecast. You can see they're all typically a little bit bigger because we saw the company was growing. That was the trend. And again, no errors here. It's not going to fat finger and put in a wrong number. Again, small mistakes like that can have huge impacts, even though they're totally innocent and anyone can add a 0 onto something. And there we go.
And again, through this, you kind of see how you can do a complete demand planning system with RPA, right? Start from your base data, use machine learning to make sure it's getting it into the right form, even have a manual review before placing it into the source system, and have an RPA bot finish it out. Again, super powerful stuff. You could reinvigorate your entire forecasting demand planning team through the use of this technology.
Right. And then at the end, I had the bot email, all the stakeholders to forecast and say, hey, this is what our 52-week forecast looks like. And we've already entered in the system, so we're confident that it's right, but we want to be looking out, right? Make sure that we have that review just to make sure we're all aligned on what the forecast is, what we're doing. So we can email that out to all the stakeholders to make sure everyone's on the same page. And again, all automated, don't have to do that emailing yourself. So overall, really cool. RPA plays really nice with data science, especially because of that data transformation that usually needs to happen before connecting a lot of data sources. It's really the advantage of RPA. It doesn't matter what it is. Is it SQL? Is it from a web page? It doesn't matter. We can grab it anywhere. And also when we're entering the data, it doesn't matter as well. So with that being said, let's hop to our next demo. So inventory management is the next one that we're going to talk about, moving down the supply chain. So we forecasted, we have the production, now we have the inventory, now we need to manage it. Like I said, I spent a year as a brewery warehouse manager at Anheuser-Busch. So this is something that's very close to me and I know really well, especially in a large operation. And just speaking to it, I wish we had more automated solutions when I was there. So the warehouse, and especially a large operation, it's really dynamic. It's constantly changing with production as it goes from shift to shift, from hour to hour. And to really make informed decisions on what we need to be doing in the warehouse, we need to be looking at the warehouse data live. And typically, at least that comes from pulling a bunch of different reports, and they take a while to pull, as well as even sometimes the reports won't be made there, right? IT hasn't made the functionality to pull the report that you want. So then you're pulling just the raw data and having to go into Excel and do that data analysis yourself. That's what managers should be doing, right? They should be looking at the data in order to make decisions. The problem is that I don't see pulling data as the value added task, right? The time you spent pulling the data has no value added to it. It's only the decisions that you make with that data that really adds value. And you'd rather people be focusing on making those decisions as opposed to spending time just tediously pulling data. And a lot of times when we're talking about employee morale, that's what we see, right? So you either start maybe showing up an hour early to work to pull the reports so you can be prepared for your shift and, do the best that you can do. And then you start burning out and then you don't do it, right? And that's not great. You don't want your employees to not be looking at data when they're making informed decisions. So how can we kind of remove those non-value added tasks? Well, the answer that we have is through RPA. So this is a process flow that we have for another demo. We basically have some generic inventory data. And then we're going to load that data in and schedule a bot. Like I said, the warehouse is really dynamic. So we want our managers or warehouse employees to be able to pull this live. So we can schedule it before shift, but we also want to give them the ability to run it whenever they want. So they don't have to spend that time doing it. They can click start, continue working, and then, 5 minutes later have everything they need to start making decisions and start telling people what they need to do for the day. So we'll schedule the bot or run it. In this case, we're just to show off some web scraping. We're actually going to pull the data from a web page that we just loaded up. Just to show more ability of, this automation anywhere software can really grab data from anywhere, web page, application, whatever it is. And then in this warehouse case, we have products that go bad or have an expiration date. First thing that we're going to do is find our overage products and put that into a report. So we know everything that we need to move, everything that we need to dump and get out of the warehouse. Next, we're going to say, hey, what's about to go overage? What do we need to get out of here as soon as possible so we're not taking the loss and dumping it? So really important for managers to focus on that. That's what you want them to be doing. That's why they're there. It's to prioritize, right? Anyone can just put products on random shipments, but it's making really good decisions what we want. And then finally, we're going to consolidate products. Can we make more room in the warehouse? There are 2 areas that have the same product that we can combine. And instead of having to kind of do all this data analysis yourself or pull multiple reports, it'll just do it all for you and then email it out and burst it out. So really the goal here is, again, empower your employees to focus on value-added tasks and reduce the mundane, repetitive ones. It helps their morale and it helps efficiency too. So that being said, I'm going to jump back into Automation Anywhere and run this demo. So again, I'm just going back to the bots page. We have a demo folder and we will go to inventory management and we can get another view of the code. I will show off what the raw data is just because I always like to show what the bot is looking at when it's kind of running through this. So this is what it's going to be looking at. Like I said, it's going to pull it from web page, but I have it in here just so that we can look at it real quickly. We have a bunch of different SKUs, products. We have their location, how many are in that location, the location's total capacity, the data was produced, and the days remaining before it goes bad and we can't sell it anymore. So again, this is not a lot of data, but if you have a huge warehouse and someone's manually trying to go through all this, it can be an hour a day, and then you're doing it twice a day, and then there's 3 shifts, and now we've spent 4 hours pulling reports a day. Not what we want. So instead, it's going to go really quick, this one. So we are going to just hit run, and hands up, not doing anything again. We're going to see how quickly we can get this data that we need right at our fingertips for the people that need it and really start making those informed decisions. So web page scraping, it's going to this web page and it's pulling this data table out. It's the same data I just showed. And then, okay, it's done. So it just ran through that, all that, and did basically just filtering. And then we're going to dump it out into an email report. So again, you could run this before every shift, every hour, or however you want to set up for your organization. And then if we go and take a look at it, we have dump. So we went ahead and parsed up everything that needs to be moved that's still in the warehouse location. So basically, this is something you assign to someone. We got to move this stuff. We can't sell it. Near overage. This is what we're talking about prioritizing. We have a bunch of products that are about to go overage and they're still in the warehouse. We need to focus on getting these out of the door first. These are the decisions we want managers to be making, not pulling reports. And finally, bin consolidation. So we have a product, there's only 1 in there and it's a capacity of 12. That's holding up a bin and we want to free it up so we can make sure we have room for future products being produced. So it tells us, hey, move that from A1 to A3 and then we'll have more room. And that's all just algorithm based, right? If there's room and the products match, send it over. So that's a quick overview of just some of the automation you can do in the inventory management. Again, really cool. Something that I wish I had when I was there, because I know I was spending a bunch of time pulling reports over and over and over again just to get live data, because 2 hours later it's changed. So definitely close to my heart, and I love that one. And then finally, so the last place we've produced we forecasted, we've produced, we've managed the inventory. Now we actually need to get it out to customers. So transportation management. And like Jake was saying, the goals are get the products to the right place at the right time for the right cost. And the only way we can do that is to keep an updated schedule, right? We need to make sure we're meeting the customer's needs, reaching our service level agreements, matching production with transportation. The problem is if you've worked in transportation, is that it's so dynamic, right? What's the weather for the day? Maybe we can't drive through the snowy mountains that day. Maybe we don't have enough CDL drivers to pick up these loads right now because the CDL market's always fluctuating. Equipment breaks down, production changes. And in order to save costs and really provide good customer service, we need to keep an updated schedule. So that begs the question, how do we keep an accurate transportation schedule? Well, typically this comes across in teams of people, depending on the size of the operation, managing requests from carriers to change shipments that they can't meet for whatever reason. Hey, our truck broke down, we can't make it today. Can you reschedule it for tomorrow? And when your operation grows really, really big, you end up having a giant team of people that are just sitting there looking at emails all day and trying to accommodate the request the best they can. Again, issue is people get sick, people take days off, people miss emails, things can fall through the cracks. So is there a better way we can do this? Can we automate this? And the answer is yes, we can with RPA. So this is what we call an intended bot. It's not fully automated and it takes a human input. So in this case, because transportation scheduling, usually the requests come in the form of an email request, we have a bot that's constantly looking at an inbox and reading emails. So a human's going to send an email request via email, and they're going to make that request whatever they want in the subject line. The bot's then going to parse out that subject line with all the data we need. And it has a bunch of different functions it can do. And these are the 3 examples that we coded up for the demo. Request schedule. So do you need to see the schedule for a day? We can send it to you in a nice format, and we can filter it by your carrier. That way we're not showing, everyone's data and transportation schedule, what they don't need to see. That would only be for internal, right? So we can do that. Do we need to change a shipment to a different time? Do we need to move it a day? Do we need to move it up or back? We can send a request there, and it can all be handled by the bot itself. It can make that change in the ERP system and then send it to success. So there's no human interaction in rescheduling. And then also dock change request. In this case, we are assigning docks to drivers to go to try to speed up just the loading process. Is there an issue? Maybe someone notices that there's an issue and they want to go to a different dock. They can send a request for that, and it'll run a dock selection algorithm where it'll choose the best one for that situation. So with that being said, let's go into this one, and I will also show off the data that we're looking at. Transportation scheduling. Bear with me one moment.
And as Mike sets this up, because I know we're running close to time, I do want to ask Sean your last question. How do clients select what to automate first? It's a great question. The answer is we like to help, right? Sit down with you, understand your processes, and go over, hey, how do we prioritize these use cases and understand what's the best thing to tackle first? We like to look for the quick wins right away, things that are easy to automate and quick to deploy, because it allows people to really see bots in action. Like RPA, as you can already tell, is kind of very visual. We like to show it very quickly, gets that engagement up. From there, we start looking at, hey, what's the best bang for our buck, right? Look for the cases that are going to provide the most value for the organization.
Right. And yeah, I didn't realize we were running low time, so I'll try to get through this quickly. So I started the bot and is looking at my inbox right here for any unread emails. And it's going to take any request it gets, parse out the subject line. So here, I'm just going to say request the schedule. And normally we would be checking your email, but since it's a demo, I'm actually going to pass the carrier parameter here. So if you go ahead and send that, hopefully email goes quickly and we actually get to see this. Fingers crossed. But you can see in the bottom right, the bot's just kind of constantly looking and stuck at 90% in a loop, which is exactly what we want. So shut that email off. We see it appear and it's unread. The bot checks every 5 seconds. So there it goes. It just went from read to unread. Took that request. And I won't wait for it to show it here. It shot it out. So there we go. So I requested the shipments for carrier hunt. And you can see that we got an Excel sheet of all the shipments for the day for carrier hunt. All right, let's say we have an issue. We want to move this top shipment. We can't make it. It's 3 a.m. Our truck broke down. We can't make it. We can do a shipment request change. So again, just shoot an email to the account, put your parameters in the subject line, send it off. Again, same thing will happen. Bot will wait for the email. And then in this case, we're going to go to that jot form again, which is going to be our ERP where we're going to make the change. We would always verify that that change can be made in the ERP. you would put your policy and you can't change, the same day shipment. You have to change at least 24 hours out. However you want to customize it for your business needs, it can totally be done. So we've opened our ERP and now we're going to check that we can actually move this shipment to a new time. It looks like it was successful. So we're going to write the new schedule and then send it out. So as you can see, instead of having teams try to manage emails, you can have a bot do this and really have someone oversee it instead. So we can see if we zoom in here, we got a success. The shipment ID was successfully rescheduled. And then we can also see today's, and it was the first line item. Now it's no longer there. So we're totally confident that it was changed. And since we're running out of time, I won't do the doc sub one, but it's about the same thing. You just send a request, says, hey, change my doc. I noticed that there's an issue with it. Go ahead and run that algorithm and send you an update. Say, hey, we updated that for you. So with that being said, that's about all we have in terms of demos. So I know we're running short on time, but any more questions?
Awesome. So one more slide to leave it off. Again, any questions you may have, right? John and me and Mike are here for you, right? So if you have any questions, you have any ideas you want to kind of talk over with us, if you want us to help prioritize different use cases in your organization that are potentially automatable, we're here for you. We're always willing to have those conversations. We love to talk. So thanks again for joining. I really appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedules to come listen to us talk on RPA and how it affects supply chains. Really appreciate it. And with that, I'll say have a nice day and talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.